Hi guys, we're at part 6 of my Columbine series now, yay! I do want to thank you guys very much for sticking with me through through the last 5 parts so far. I have already gone ahead and covered April 20th itself. Now I'm going to go ahead and cover the immediate aftermath, and if I can, I'll go ahead and cover my time at Chatfield, but right now I'm just gonna go ahead and give you a few small details here. I noticed there was one thing that I left out from my last video because I was kind of in a rush telling my story, but there's one thing I left out. When I've been sitting on, I mentioned in my last video, I've been sitting on the front porch talking on the phone with my friend Ashley, who'd called me over and over again, and at that point, I was just thinking, if I ever see these two guys in court, the two shooters, if I ever see them in court, I'm gonna punch them right in the nose. And at the same time as mom had come out and said that the news had been saying there was 25 dead, 25 injured. She'd also said that there were reports that the two gunmen had killed themselves. And then me, I'm just thinking, well, I'll punch them at their funerals then. So that was pretty much my thought process the rest of that day. And also, after I got home that day, I forgot to mention this as well, but I was still kind of numb physically and mentally. I still couldn't really believe I hadn't been shot. So I just kept patting myself down just over and over and over through the rest of the day, and probably the next day as well, just to make sure that I hadn't actually gotten shot and just was just numb to it from the adrenaline rush or anything. So I kept patting myself down the rest of the day, and of course I wasn't shot, which was lucky me. And also, right about the time I noticed the scratch on my leg from climbing over the fence, and I noticed I had this smear of blood on my left hand. I couldn't tell you if it was from the girl who'd been next to me or if it was from any other kids who were behind the police car with me. I honestly couldn't tell you, but I do remember it didn't come off for 2 days after the shooting. And also, the shirt that I mentioned that I wore that day, I thought it brought me good luck, that it helped me keep from being seen, so I ended up wearing that shirt for a week straight after the shooting without washing it, which I know is kind of sounds icky, but back then I thought it was a good luck charm, so I just wore it for a week straight. I didn't even care if it was dirty or anything. I wore it for that next week straight. And as I mentioned earlier, Joe, my older brother, he was the founder of the Trenchcoat Mafia, so once word got out about the whole Trenchcoat Mafia thing and the whole Eric and Dylan wearing trench coats thing, of course, the media started, in the days after the shooting, the media started bugging my house, not to talk with me, but to talk with Joe, because he'd been the leader, he knew Eric and Dylan, and apparently nobody in the TCM was willing to really talk with the reporters. As far as I know, Joe was the only one willing to talk, and I'll go ahead and give you a link to one of his early interviews in the About section below in this video. I'll go ahead and link to that. And also, there's this one image of the Trenchcoat Mafia that made the rounds a lot. It was a picture of everybody from my freshman yearbook, and I'll go ahead and give you a link to that as well if you don't know the image I'm talking about, but it was in the senior dedication section, and I actually have a copy of that yearbook right here, so I can go ahead and read it out loud to you here, because there's something I want to explain in it. So let me go ahead and get that really quick. It says, Trenchcoat Mafia, we are Josh, Joe, Chris, Horst, Chuck, Brian, Penline, Nicole, Kristen, Krista, plus Ted, Alex, and Corey. Who says we're different? Insanity is healthy. Remember rocking parties at Kristen's, foosball at Joe's, and fencing at Christopher's. Stay alive, stay different, stay crazy. Oh, and stay away from cream soda! In all caps, cream soda! Love always, the chicks. Now, some people might have been thinking, well, what's the deal with the cream soda thing? That's some kind of in-joke. Well, I can go ahead and actually explain that because I was there. So, what happened was my freshman year, me and Joe, we always caught a ride with the Brian who's mentioned in the Trenchcoat Mafia dedication. We caught a ride with him to and from school every day. And so when I'd come out from school at the end of one day, I noticed that Mr. DeAngelis, the principal, and a campus officer, they're both out there searching Brian's truck, and I asked Joe what's going on, and he just shrugged, and he's like, they thought we were drinking alcohol, and it turned out they'd both been drinking IBC cream soda, which is in these glass bottles, and apparently from a distance it looked like it was alcohol. So of course the campus officer and Mr. D came over and they threw a big fit. They searched the truck and of course didn't find any alcohol. So they just kind of said sorry and walked off. And so it kind of became a joke after that. So that's why there's the thing about the cream soda in the senior dedication there. So for anybody who's ever been wondering about that, there you have it. That's the story behind that. So, what else is there? Yeah, Joe got bugged a lot by the media, and it actually got to the point. Let's see, he got interviewed by the local news, of course, Inside Edition, Dateline, a few other places, media outlets I'm probably forgetting about, and actually got to the point where we had to leave the phone off. Mom had to leave the phone off the hook because we just kept getting called constantly and constantly from people wanting interviews and interviews. And of course, because of his old Trenchcoat Mafia Association, he also started getting death threats as well. So that's why it's another reason why we had to leave the phone off the hook, just because they thought he was in on the whole thing or something. And it's like, what? He was just like, well, he's pretty much like, well, if I was in on the whole thing, I definitely wouldn't have let my sister go to school that day, that's for sure. So he did feel some guilt for that, for not being able to protect me, and he honestly never really discussed it with me or anything. It was just kind of one of those silent things between us that it was kind of a mutual understanding, like, yeah, I knew he felt guilty and he knew that I knew he felt guilty, so it just never really came up, really. So anyway, about a week after the shooting, there's this big old public memorial over at the Bulls Crossing movie theater, and there's just thousands and thousands of people there. And I remember it being a pretty cold day. It was all overcast and everything. And Laura, I wanted to go to it, so Laura took me over there. We had to stay across the street over by the lake in Clement Park, because it was just so darn crowded over at Bulls Crossing. Even Clement Park was really, really crowded. And I distinctly remember seeing this one little girl walking along the lake while we were walking towards this public memorial, and I heard her say, even the water looked sad because it was overcast and it made the water look gray. So I really remember that. And I don't remember a lot about the memorial itself. I just remember there being a lot of people, and that stupid song, Columbine, Friend of Mine, being played for the first time. I can't stand that song, so don't even mention it to me. I can't stand that song. And also, there's this bagpipe band, the Pikes Peak Highlanders, who also played at that memorial. And as I came to find out some years later, my current husband actually was one of the ones who was playing in the band that day. So we did get pretty close to meeting that day, but it actually didn't happen for another 3 years after that. But I'll go ahead and get to that in due time. So anyway, the memorial ended, and of course the parking situation was just crappy. So Laura and I had to sit in her car and just wait for a while until we could get a chance to move so we could leave. And we sat there in her car and just blasted Tom Petty songs over and over, just like we always did before. So it was a pretty normal moment there for once, and it was nice. And excuse me. Sometime around this time, I want to say, they decided that they wouldn't be able to open Columbine for us this school year because there's so much damage to the school itself. So they would have to have kids go over to they'd have to have us go over and share Chatfield High School with the Chatfield kids. So they started setting that up, and let me go ahead and backtrack here because I just remembered something else. A few days after the shooting, before the memorial, some police officers came over to interview me personally about what happened in the library, yada yada. And they gave me this printout of the layout of the library, asked me to label where I was and label where I heard some of the insults coming from, like the look at this kid's dick thing that I mentioned earlier. I kept thinking I'd misheard, like maybe they'd said, hey, look at this kid's brains, because I'd heard some other kids say that they'd said that. And since I've had a lot of people asking about that particular comment. I'll go ahead and address that now. The thing about that comment was, like I said, I thought for years and years, maybe